Was the R129 SL a success or failure? So in 1989 in Europe and 1990 in the United States, Mercedes replaced the R107, which was probably the most iconic SL convertible ever produced. Just saying, this is all based on statistics, okay? Like how many people own these cars and care about them and want to sort them out. And then they replaced it with the R129. And while the 107 was based on the 114 and 115 chassis sedans that were released in 1968, so it was kind of an antiquated design, and was updated with improved technology from the 126 and 124 series cars as time went on. The 129 was sort of like a shortened 124. In fact, it was so much of a 124 that the suspension is pretty much the same. The way that the cars are laid out electrically is the same. A lot of the engine choices that were used on the 129 eventually migrated back into the 124, like the M119 engine. And what I want to explore in this short video is whether or not the 129 chassis was actually a success in terms of producing a forever car, a durable car, like the 107 was, or whether it was a failure. Now, I know there's some people who are going to be watching this, they're like, the R129 is such a better car. Yeah. You know, I've never really liked the 129 that much, but I'm willing to give it a fair shake just because I do work on a few of them and I want to compare the subjective experience of one to the other. So if you look at things like fit and finish and you look at certain R107s versus the 129, you could tell that there's some deficiencies in early R107s. If you have like a 72, 73, 74, let's say all the way up to like 78, 79 on the 107 chassis, you're going to have to work a lot harder to keep the dash from cracking and the seats from collapsing. I say this because there is no real like method for preserving a 107 interior. They just all pretty much fall apart after they get exposed to heat and humidity, which is really unfortunate. The R129, on the other hand, had a very durable dashboard. A lot of its interior parts were pretty good. The problems started to occur when you know, seats would start wearing out or water would get into the interiors and all the power accessories would start to act weird, and then pieces like the plastic visors would start to break and the overhead consoles. By the way, if you need these parts, check out ClassicTrimParts.com. They have all the stuff you could need to rehabilitate your 129 interior. But I'd say that the later R107, like 1981 and later, 1980 and later, all the way up to into production, had the better interior, probably more so, more durable than the 129. The 129 had a lot of lightweight or UV sensitive materials that would just crumble. You see some really well preserved low mileage R129s just like you do R107s, but really with any of these cars, heat and humidity will kill the interiors. Now, from a maintenance and repair standpoint, the R129 has some advantages and it has some serious disadvantages. The serious disadvantages, which we'll talk about, you know, in the context of the tools required to diagnose them, are what makes me really despise this model platform. You have to have a STAR diagnostic system. You have to know how to use it. You have to have a lot of patience. You have to have a knack for dealing with major electrical problems. If you have a 380 SL or a 500 SL, you can know very little about automotive electrical systems and actually still get by and have a decently operational, functional car, because the cars require very little electrical input to function. If you have a later R129, like a 93 and later, all I could say is, like, you better have a lot of patience and you better have an IQ over 130, because if you're an average person working in a car, you can't really negotiate your way through those cars. They store all kinds of codes. There are all sorts of codes that have to be checked. There are all sorts of adjustments that you could simulate in the HHT, the handheld tester module of SDS. And by the way, if I'm losing you, it's because that's what it was designed to do in the first place. The level that these cars are on mechanically means you have to have a really great mechanic, and that's kind of a deal breaker. And then this brings me into the comparison of the R107. Early 107s, particularly 350 SL and 450 SLs with D-Jetronic, are not necessarily for the do-it-yourselfer either. Sorting out a 50-year-old electronic fuel injection system is like Harry Potter stuff or whatever. It requires like a little bit of art and a little bit of magic, and then there's some science thrown in there as well. Like, if you're an electrical engineer, you'll probably do fine if the cars had like a rough and humid life. But I still find that D-Jetronic is easier to work on than LHM SFI, which was the injection system used after '93 on the R129. Early R129s had Bosch KE Jetronic. They're not bad at all. In fact, they're fine. In fact, those engines will run pretty well as long as they don't have clogged injectors or a dirty fuel tank or whatever. The early M119 engine, the 119 960, is a spectacular engine. My main regret about that engine is they never put it in the 126. So, something to think about there. Although it does like to run hot, keeping that thing cool is very hard. But again, like the chips fall with the electrical diagnosis and repair with the 560 SL, and then even more so with the 380 and the 500. And now we're going to get into the last part. We're going to talk about the owners. R107 owners, particularly people that own really nice mid to late R107s, tend to take really good care of them and appreciate them and love them and enjoy them. They tend to stay in the same families because they're just good cars. R129 owners, I'd say that a lot of them are more concerned, not all of them, but I'd say a lot of them are more concerned about cost. Typically the first question from R129 owners is, how much is this going to cost? Our first question from R107 owners is, can you fix this? So notice that one demographic is concerned about getting the car repaired. The other one is concerned about the budget. Not a great way to service a 30-year-old car. Just saying. Now, there's some R129 owners that love their cars and will preserve them at any cost, and I understand that, just like there are people that have 201s and will preserve them at any cost. But it's an anomaly, and it shows up in our service data. 9 out of 10 SLs that we see that were made after 1972 are 107s. And that doesn't mean I'm turning away people with nice R129s. I will turn away somebody with a bad, nasty, ugly 107. Believe me, don't test me. But we'll get 107s that come in and it's like, well, this is a manageable project. We'll get a rough 129 that comes in and we'll just be like, we'll just say to ourselves, there's no way anybody's going to spend the money on this car. And I think that's what it boils down to. You know, the cars could be good. It's just good luck getting somebody to fund the restoration of an R129. It's possible. You just have to have a lot of patience and a lot of money and a lot of willingness to keep diagnosing electrical problems that sometimes don't make any sense. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Tap the bell for notifications. If you have an R129, we'll have good used gaskets, send you a box of used tissues to comfort yourself. And if you have an R107 and you're thinking about going to an R129, just stick with what you've got. You will live a longer, happier life. And I'll see you in the next video.